advisory council headed by Angela Rayner. Will this be a backdoor to an Islamic blasphemy law for the UK? Plus, I'll be joined by one of the great historians of our time, Professor Nigel Biggar, now raised to the peerage, on his scathing new report on the Church of England's reparations plan, which would hand over £100 million. State of the Nation starts now. I'll also be joined by my most pugnacious panel, the former editor of The Sun, Kelvin Mackenzie, and the journalist and author, Michael Crick. As ever, it's a crucial part of the programme. Let me know your views. mailmog@gbnews.com. But now, it's your favourite time of the day, the News Bulletin with Aaron Armstrong.
Thank you very much, Jacob. Good evening to you. Our top stories: around 10 people have been killed after a shooting at an adult education centre in Sweden. A warning: viewers may find the following footage distressing.
Utan jacka. Alltså jag går ut henne nu. Oh my god, det var skjutning. Folk gråter. Oh my god, det är skjutning!
The shooting took place at campus Rizbergska in the central city of Örebro, which is attended by students aged 20 and above. This footage shows students hiding under desks while the attack took place. Well, police believe the male perpetrator is amongst the dead. We don't know his identity or age, or indeed any potential motive. Police, though, say they don't expect any further attacks and they don't believe there is a terror motive. Swedish Prime Minister Ulf Kristersson has described it as the worst mass shooting in the country's history. The family of a teenager who was stabbed to death at a school in Sheffield have paid tribute to their beautiful boy. Harvey Wilgoose died after the attack at All Saints Catholic School yesterday. His family say they're utterly heartbroken and their lives will never be the same again. Harvey's mother, Caroline, and other family members visited the school earlier, where flowers, balloons and cards have been left for the popular pupil. A 15-year-old boy arrested on suspicion of murder remains in custody. A panel of international medical experts has concluded Lucy Letby did not murder any babies after outlining significant new evidence. Letby serving 15 whole life prison sentences after being convicted of murdering 7 babies and attempting to murder 7 others in 2015 and 2016. Now, the case is to be reviewed by a commission that investigates potential miscarriages of justice after Letby's lawyers applied for her case to be reviewed. Chair of the panel, Dr. Xu Li, says there are alternative explanations for each of Letby's convictions.
We did not find any murders. In all cases, death or injury were due to natural causes or just bad medical care. In our opinion, the medical evidence doesn't support murder in any of these babies, just natural causes and bad medical care.
And Sir Keir Starmer is to push ahead with his deal to cede sovereignty of the Chagos Islands. That is according to the Prime Minister of Mauritius, amid reports the new terms on the Indian Ocean archipelago have been agreed. The PM is currently hosting his Danish counterpart this evening, where they are expected to discuss European security and migration. The meeting comes amid a diplomatic row between Denmark and the United States over Donald Trump's claims he wants to acquire Greenland. Donald Trump, incidentally, may still veto Sir Keir Starmer's controversial plans to hand the Chagos Islands over to Mauritius. Those are the latest GB News headlines. More from me just after 9 o'clock.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Welcome back to State of the Nation. Is Nigel Farage the new, improved Roy Jenkins? Is he breaking the mould of British politics in the way the SDP tried to 40 years ago? Certainly the two-party system is under strain, with a new YouGov poll showing Reform in the lead for the first time and the Tories in third place. YouGov has Reform on 25%, Labour 24%, and we're on 21% of the popular vote. This may be within the margin of error, but one thing is clear: Reform is now a force to be reckoned with. The poll also reveals something perhaps even more telling. 1 in 5 Tory voters from the last election would now vote for Nigel. Reform is stealing the Conservative Party's clothes. It has various ideas from which the Tories ought to be drawing inspiration on immigration, both legal and illegal, the much-needed net zero migration, as well as on the economy, on law and order, and, of course, on the crazy net zero plans. The last election shows that the British voter is out of love with the status quo. There was no enthusiasm for Sir Keir, the Reverend Starmer's Labour Party, as shown by its low vote share, and the last 6 months have made the Socialists even less popular. Labour's majority may be huge, but it's on a surprisingly small share of the vote. The reason it achieved such a big majority was because of the split right-leaning vote. Yet, if the right remains split, it could potentially do the same again in 2029. So, what's the solution? In a first-past-the-post electoral system, each wing of politics needs to unite, otherwise it will lose. As I covered last year at Tory party conference, a majority of Conservative members support a Tory-Reform pact. Indeed, 70% of Tory voters support closer relations with Nigel Farage. One poll has Reform UK winning 114 seats on current trends. And this is hugely impressive, considering it's only got 5 seats at the moment. But it isn't remotely close to a majority where you need about 325. If we enter the next election in this 3-horse race without a pact, we may well see Labour keep its majority. And just look how badly they're governing. It's the one outcome neither the Tories nor Reform want. But if a pact were made, it could be devastating for the Socialists, wiping out its majority and paving the way for a truly Conservative coalition, a government that could do things as Trump is showing us can be done. We don't always have to be ruled by the blob. Our members want the same things. We have the same vision for the future of the UK, and we both want the Labour Party out. It's time to give the people what they want, a Tory Reform non-aggression pact. As ever, let me know your views via mailmog@gbnews.com. But now I'm joined by, as I said, Elon Musk's favourite Reform MP, Rupert Lowe. I think Elon wanted Rupert to be leader, as well as my pugnacious panel, former editor of The Sun, Kelvin Mackenzie, and the journalist and author, Michael Crick. Rupert, thank you for coming in.
Good evening, Jacob.
Between the two of us, there is very little policy that we actually disagree on. I address lots of Conservative associations, and Conservative members are where we are. Don't we have to try and bring our two parties together? Otherwise, we end up with another Labour government.
Well, let me first of all say, Jacob, if I'd sat here a year ago and say we'd be polling 25%, people would have thought I was coming from a different planet. So I actually think this is the beginning of a really seismic change in British politics. I think this is a once-in-a-100-year event. So you can say that there should be some form of alliance of the right, but really, is the Tory party a Tory party? That's the question I think you've got to ask yourself. And having had an 80-seat majority, which we largely gave you, or like Nigel gave you by standing down in all the Tory seats, I would argue you wasted your opportunity to show that you're Conservatives. So what I think people have got bored of is the unit party, the sort of Cameronite One Nation Tories, and the hollowed-out Blairite Labour Party, who have failed the British electorate. They have failed to hold the civil service to account. They've failed the country, and I think people now want some common sense. Now we may be called far-right, but we're not far-right. We're just a common-sense group of real people who've done real things.
You're clearly not far-right, and I think this country is extremely lucky in having a party of the right that is within the bounds of normal political discourse. You are not like some of the far-right parties that have arisen in other parts of the world. I agree with you that the uniparty is a thoroughly bad idea. There has been too much consensus. That consensus is breaking down. Almost nobody now in the Conservative Party, except a marginal fringe, is in favour of continuing the net zero zealotry.
Well, we're very clear on that. But in answer to your question about, of course, we don't want to see Labour perpetuate further damage. It's already damaging Britain hugely in a short period of time it's been in power, the 6 months it's been in power. But I'm sorry to say that I can't see how Reform, other than Reform uniting the right, and there is a degree of Tory arrogance that suggests that you're still going to win more seats than us in the next election, which I think is unlikely. We've obviously got a big job to do, get our policy and our structure right, and to select the right candidates and actually bring some common sense to it. But I can't see, unless you remove most of Tory party central office and you get rid of your Lib Dem MPs, which is a very big percentage of the party, I can't see you uniting the right, whereas I can see Reform uniting the right. So I think what we've got to do, in answer to your question, is we keep paddling our own canoes in whatever direction we go, and we get towards the election, and then we decide who is the unifier.
All right.
But in the meantime, we may have already unified some people.
But haven't we got some opportunities that are coming up in May? Regrettably, not as many as there ought to be.
Well, they're being suspended, a lot of the elections, apparently.
What if the Conservatives and Reform look at a non-aggression pact for some of these elections? Perhaps we should see how well...
A coupon election.
And Wales might be an interesting experiment, because you're doing extremely well in Wales, much better than the Conservatives. The Labour Party has ruled Wales forever, appallingly. Welsh independence, Welsh devolution has been a disaster for the Welsh. Isn't there something that we might be able to agree on? May there not be mayoral elections where you might...
To be frank, Jacob, I think we have to be very careful. Our brand, I don't think our supporters want to see us just take any Tory alliance that is thrown our way, or indeed any Tory candidates thrown our way. I would argue, and I know you are a Tory and you've been a very loyal Tory, for which I give you credit, but I think the Tory party has probably let you down, and I think the Tory party has definitely let the country down.
I think the Tory party is its members sometimes rather more than its hierarchy. But let me bring Michael in. Michael, divided wings of politics lose. And actually, the SDP allowed Margaret Thatcher to get her biggest majority in 1983.
Yeah, well, I think if you two parties... And by the way, I think one of the ways to bring this about would be if you were to announce on this programme tonight your defection to the Reform Party.
Anybody.
Which I think all of us would approve of that if you were to do that.
Rupert's
for our different reasons.
Rupert's just said they're not
There
going to pick up any Johnny
exceptions. There
Carver.
are some exceptions, Jacob.
No, but seriously...
Not very many, but a few.
I mean, the two problems with this, aren't there? First of all, a large number of Conservative voters and quite a lot of Conservative activists would then leave your party and join the Liberal Democrats or other parties. And, of course, remember, these polls, by the way, show the Liberal Democrats still doing well, 14%, the Greens doing well on 9%. It's not just about... all the minor parties, as it were, are doing well. But getting back to the specific issue, you'd suffer defections. The other problem, you mentioned Roy Jenkins. The problem that the SDP and the Liberal Democrats had way back in the 80s was it was all very well in principle, but they could not agree which seats they were going to give up. And, of course, if we were to take North East Somerset, where you used to be the MP, do you really think all your activists would be happy with you saying, OK, we're pulling out boys and girls, we're going to let Reform have this seat? Because your councillors would say, hang on, what about me? I'm defending my council seat next spring. You can't give over this.
I address a lot of Conservative associations, and I would say the majority of members who turn up to events have Reform views, and that is where they are in the Conservative Party. When I addressed them 5 years ago, you're absolutely right. There were a lot of Lib Demi ones who would have a go at me for being anti-net zero and so on. I think it's shifted in terms of our votes and our members.
But I think that in principle, they may think it's a great idea, but when it comes to the practice, people who are local Conservative councillors and will have to give that up in order to allow the Reform to have that seat, then it'd be different.
I think, first of all, in that poll, the other thing that really caught my eye was that 41% of Conservatives were saying that they wanted to see not a merge, but they wanted to see some accommodation. And this is where I don't see Kemi Badenoch surviving. The leader of the Conservative Party has to be somebody who can accommodate Nigel Farage and you and your colleagues. That is the reality of it. The idea that the Conservatives can go into 2029, as things stand now, right, anything can happen, I totally agree, but the most likely thing to happen is that Reform continues to be an exciting, interesting political opportunity for people to say, as they do all the time, I've tried everything else, I'm going to give these guys a go.
Kelvin, are you advocating a reverse takeover? So if there were a vacancy, then Nigel should be leader of the Conservative Party.
I see Kemi in a lot of trouble for lots of different reasons come the summer. She's not making any news. She's not creating weather. She is not doing anything. And the biggest mistake she made was when she attacked Nigel, when you guys announced how many members you had attracted. That showed her up to be politically naive. She, unfortunately, I believe she's done for, and I believe that a lot of people now think that actually with a generic in charge, what might have been able to do in the years ahead was everybody to get on rather better. To be hostile to each other was a fatal political mistake for her future and the Conservatives.
So, Rupert, would you like to see a united Conservative Reform Party under Nigel's leadership, which is, I think, is what Kelvin advertising?
Well, I think at the moment, Jacob, it's too early to be talking.
What do you think what Elon would say? He wants you.
Well, he doesn't want me, actually.
He does? I thought he did.
No.
You'd get 100 million if
He
you were.
follows me on Twitter, which is an honour. But when asked by one of my followers whether he thought I should be leader of the party, he didn't say I should be. What he said was he enjoyed my political commentary. He was following what I was doing. He did not say I should be leader.
That is the most Jim Hacker answer you've ever given. Next time it'll be you've got no ambitions in that direction. But if your friends and colleagues advise you. Thank you very much, Rupert, and to my panel. After the break, is the Labour Party on the brink of implosion following an internal row regarding oil drilling? Find out shortly.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
A woman of 53 has believed for 18 months she was in an online relationship with Brad Pitt.
I think we're seeing pictures. So these are the pictures that she received that made her believe that she was in this relationship with Brad Pitt.
And you'll see that some of it is in hospital because the scammer was claiming that he was suffering from cancer. This was playing very much on her emotion. So this is a divorcee who lived in Mauritius. She'd received a £700,000 divorce settlement, or £650,000 divorce settlement, I should say, and £700,000 has been taken from her through this scam.
Yeah.
As she was becoming, every time she became suspicious, the money was taken for payment of charges on gifts that she never received, and then hospital fees. There was lots of emotions being played into there. Now, as somebody, I'm a rom-com writer by trade, so I write romantic fiction. And one of the books I've written has actually been about somebody who did online dating, got herself into a whole heap of trouble. Not quite, she wasn't in a relationship with Brad Pitt, but she met somebody dodgy. So because I've written that book, I've met a lot of people who've come up to me and said, oh, it's happened to me.
It's scary in this digital age, isn't it?
They've lost $700,000, but somebody has tried it on. Somebody my question is, would a man go 18 months in a relationship online without seeing somebody and keep it going? Or is this feeding into this neediness of a particular demographic of a woman who that's better than anything else she got going on in her life, was what was being fed to her over the internet? I just
and then maybe a little bit of her knew, but she kind of just suppressed it because she
was hoping it was Brad Pitt.
Her daughter apparently for a year was saying this can't be true. Come on, think about it. But she just fell for it. But I just wonder what's right. It's a very sad story. She's obviously now getting a lot of hate and ridicule as well.
Because she's been on French TV and she had a huge amount of pushback from it.
GB News, the People's Channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, though.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Welcome back. I'm still Jacob Rees-Mogg, and we were talking about the Reform Party going ahead in the polls, and the mail mogs have come in. Mark says in 2019, Reform stood down to make way for the Conservatives. Maybe the Conservatives should return the favour to make way for Reform and stand down in 2029. And Dennis says, sorry, Jacob, the Tories have lost all credibility and can never be trusted. For Tories to get rid of Labour, they will need to vote Reform. Simple as that. Well, the Labour Party could be on the cusp of a rebellion following reports that the government could support the Rosebank oil field project. The support is suspected to come from the Treasury, which is obviously looking for growth, but this represents an interdepartmental clash, considering the Energy Secretary, Ed Miliband, has previously called the project climate vandalism. Furthermore, backbenchers are expected to rebel if the government supports the move. Well, I'm joined now by Robbie McPherson, former leader of the All-Party Parliamentary Group for Climate Change. Robbie, thank you very much for coming in. I've always been in favour of using all the assets that we have, because we may as well have our oil as other people's. It's economically beneficial and the emissions will net out in the same way.
Yeah, well, thank you so much, Jacob, for having me on. It's a good opportunity to speak about the recent ruling on Rosebank. And I just want to take a few steps back and begin by acknowledging that the courts did rule that Rosebank was unlawfully approved by the last government.
And that's following on from a ruling by the Supreme Court saying that you had to take into account the lifetime emissions rather than just the emissions in the project.
Exactly. The emissions which would result as from burning the reserves from these projects, which is a very common sense decision. And actually, on the specifics of Rosebank, it's really worth highlighting that this is a bad deal for Britain. In terms of what Rosebank will do to lower bills, it won't do anything. And that's because, like 80% of North Sea oil that's extracted, it will be sold, as confirmed by the field's developers, overseas on the international market, and it will not make a material difference to bills
The
here.
price of oil is an international price,
Right.
But there are 2 points on that. One is that the more oil that is produced, the lower the price, just a straightforward matter of supply and demand. And that you saw during COVID when demand collapsed.
But increasing,
I'll just complete the point. The prices collapsed because demand collapsed, prices collapsed. Actually, they were below zero. You had to pay people to take your oil. There is a very, very strong supply-demand correlation with oil, and therefore extra supply has an effect. And the second point is that there's money to be made, and it might as well be made by the UK as by a foreign government.
And that's interesting that you pick up on that final point, because the specific case of Rosebank, which is what we're discussing, actually, who benefits from that project, OK? So the oil that's going to be extracted will be sold overseas. It will not make a material difference to British bill payers who are battling high energy prices.
Well, at the margin, it reduces prices.
But the developer of the oil field, which is a Norwegian state company, will reap the profits of that field.
The tax revenue will be very large.
But in terms also, actually, of who else benefits from that project, there's a reason that local leaders, trade unionists, have called this project specifically a betrayal of Scottish workers. And that's because the contracts for this project are not going to tap into local expertise in Scotland. And many of these contracts will be shipped out to the Middle East. And so the real benefits will not be seen really by the British people of this specific oil field. So it's important that it never goes ahead.
But that's not right, because all oil that is extracted in UK territorial waters attracts not only ordinary corporation tax, but a windfall tax on top of that, and an extra windfall tax at the moment because profits have been so high. So that all comes into the UK Treasury and helps reduce the overall level of taxation in the country. And whoever the workers are, wherever they come from, they will spend money locally because they will be travelling to and from the oil field.
But actually, again, on the specifics of Rosebank, the cost of the development of this field will be borne by the British taxpayer, whilst the profits will be reaped by a Norwegian-backed company. So this is not a deal.
The taxpayer won't be funding it. It won't be taxpayer funded.
Or in the interest
it won't be taxpayer funded.
In the interest of British people.
It won't be
so that's why it doesn't need to go ahead.
It won't be a taxpayer-funded operation. But it will be private investment coming in by the Norwegians.
No, there's going to be tax breaks which will be given to these companies.
But tax breaks.
That's why this shouldn't go ahead.
Hold on. Tax breaks is something completely different. You don't pay tax on investment. You can write off investment against corporation tax for any business operating in the UK. That is completely standard. That's not a tax break. That is the normal law of the land. You could say that of every business that's set up, it's being paid for the taxpayer. No, it's not. You can depreciate your asset and that's offset against your corporation tax. But in terms of emissions, unless we're going to using no oil, surely it's better to have our oil and have that in the global market than allow all these profits to go abroad.
Well, I think what we need to do is move away from volatile fossil fuels towards renewables.
Okay, but that's a different question.
We need to do that in a way that's fair for communities, and approving this new oil field will not achieve that. And let me just follow up on that, because that's really important. On the oil and gas licensing front, expansion of oil and gas over the past decade, despite expansion of new fields, the issuing of new licenses, what we've seen is jobs supported by the sector halve. So this is an industry that is in terminal decline.
It's a mature industry.
And so we need to move away from it in a way that's fair for communities, just for workers.
Just because it's mature doesn't mean you need to close it down early. But that if we use the oil that we have got now, that is a perfectly sensible thing to do, unless your point on we go to zero immediately. But we're not.
I'm not suggesting. All right. I'm not suggesting that we switch off.
OK, but getting us to zero at whatever pace is a different question from whether we use our resources or allow that profit to be made overseas. I don't agree with you on the speed of getting to net zero. I'm actually against it. But that's an entirely different question from whether in the process, in the transition, you maximise, you sweat your own assets.
But increasing oil and gas production here at home is not going to make a material difference to energy bills, and that's the point that we should be talking about. Because
it's good for our
people
economy.
want to see lower energy bills, and so approving fields like Rosebank will not achieve that, because the oil is going to be sold overseas, and the beneficiary of that will be the developers, who are a Norwegian-backed company, which is why this is a bad deal for Britain.
Will be money for the British economy, which is what we want. Anyway, thank you, Robbie. In a moment, we'll be looking at Trump's trade war and the benefits it has already reaped for him. Plus, is Labour's new Islamophobia Advisory Council a threat to free speech?
Dinner under the stars tonight?
That reminds me of our travel insurance.
You mean All Clear Skies?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News travel destinations forecast.
Hi there. If you're looking for some winter sun, actually the Mediterranean's the place to find it. Plenty of sunny skies during the next few days, although Greece has seen some heavy rain, and that's clearing on Wednesday, followed by windy conditions through Wednesday, Thursday into Friday. Italy, through the Balearics, into Spain, Portugal and the Canaries, indeed plenty of sunny skies, and it remains that way until the end of the week, when it does turn increasingly unsettled.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News travel destinations forecast.
Welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Most of us have a couple of sunny days to look forward to, but it is going to be a bit colder than it was today. That's thanks to a cold front which has been pushing across the country. It's also bringing many of us a spell of rain. It started off pretty wet in the west, and through this evening that rain working its way across East Anglia and the southeast, but clearing away by midnight. Showers following on behind into western Scotland, some snow on the hills here, a few showers drifting through Northern Ireland overnight, but for many a dry night, lengthy clear spells, and a bit colder than last night, 2 or 3 degrees in most towns and cities, but there will be some pockets of frost in the countryside. So yeah, a chilly start to Wednesday, but nothing unusual for February, and generally a sunny start too, certainly across much of eastern Scotland. Plenty of sunshine on offer. Further west, there'll be sunny spells, but there will be showers moving in on a fairly brisk breeze, and some of those showers falling as snow over the hills. 1 or 2 showers will drift in across Northern Ireland through the day. May see the odd one still for northwest England, West Wales, southwest England too, but most of England and Wales starting fine and dry and with plenty of sunshine, and actually not a great deal of change as we go through the day. Some cloud will bubble up. There is the small chance of the odd shower across western parts. Certainly showers will keep going in western Scotland, but for the vast majority, dry and bright, lighter winds than today. It will be a cooler, fresher feel, but these temperatures in the afternoon pretty much spot on the average for the early part of February. Those temperatures will drop down pretty sharply on Wednesday night. More widespread frost on Thursday morning. Could be some fog around too on Thursday morning, particularly across these eastern areas, but generally it's another fine day. Not as many showers in the northwest. Most places dry and fine with sunny spells. Notice though a bit of an easterly wind picking up across the south. That will introduce more cloud on Friday and a colder feel for all of us heading into the weekend.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Well, we were talking about Rosebank and the mailmugs have come in. Graham says, UK oil brings jobs and taxes to the people of the UK, while importing oil does neither. We urgently need to tackle the mental illness circulating that convinces people that importing oil somehow makes us net zero. Graham, I think you're absolutely spot on. And Linda says, Jacob, please can you explain why, if oil and gas is sold by international prices, we pay more than most countries? Please make it make sense. Oil is at an international price, we pay the same. Gas is more complicated. There are more regional prices than international prices, and we had lower prices in the 1980s. But I can't devote a whole segment to that at the moment, so we may have to come back to it. Donald Trump's trade war is well underway, and he has already begun reaping the benefits of it. Within days, we've seen Colombia cave on deportations. We've seen Mexico come to the negotiating table, stop tariffs, as well as a similar case with Canada. The real question is what happens with the EU and the United Kingdom. Trump has suggested the UK could be spared, presenting a golden opportunity for Starmer. Well, my most pugnacious panel is still here, Kelvin Mackenzie and Michael Crick. Michael, this is really very exciting, isn't it? Because actually, we could open up free trade to Donald Trump. We could be in his good books. We could reinforce the transatlantic alliance, and it'd be good for British consumers too, because we'd get cheaper prices.
It is a shocking situation. Not quite as shocking as you using the phrase cave, by the way, rather than cave in. I never thought... I know it was on the auto cue. And
I thought that's I read it. I thought that's I read it. This is dreadful.
And there was a drama the other night that had Margaret Thatcher using that phrase as well, which was even less likely. But getting back to the issue, the interesting thing is here that a lot of this is not really about trade. Here is Trump using the threat of tariffs to get as a weapon of foreign policy on deportations and policing the border and all of that. And I cannot think of that. It must have happened before, but I can't think of when it happened before. He's become the world's bully. And I don't have a great deal of time for the Chinese, but at least they are standing up to him properly, whereas other people are just caving in far too rapidly. In many cases, they're actually caving in with policies that I'm quite pleased about. But the sycophancy of the world's leaders right now, the fear that they seem to live in of offending Trump, totally unlike I've ever seen before with the world's leaders, with any American president. And I can't understand why it's happening that way.
Look, if you are America, and 7 million illegal Mexicans have crossed the border since 2019, right? You would be... You've got to look at it from the Americans' perception. The only way to stop this, Biden didn't stop it. Trump said, he comes in, right, you either stop that, 10 seconds later, they say, very sorry about that, we're going to put 10,000 troops on the border. That is just straightforward politics and not a war. I congratulate, because the alternative Trump would just say, send his soldiers in and we go 50 miles inside your border and you're not allowed any further forward. He doesn't do that. And actually he got a good result out of it. Canada, Canada, if you've ever lived in America, Canadians are the second-class citizens of that continent, and they feel very bad about it, and they've just been humiliated one more time. If they stop sending the fentanyl over, if they stopped allowing their borders to be absolutely porous, everything would be fine. For the EU, I think they've got a degree of trouble. If they honestly believe they can, quote, stand up to Trump, they are wasting their time.
But it's good news for us, because I've always wanted us to get rid of tariffs on US cars and to be more open to US agricultural products. I think this is hugely beneficial for UK consumers. And if Trump persuades the UK government to make cars in this country cheaper, that's great.
Yes, look, this is for Starmer. This is a very strange moment. He's looking to America to bail him out of being the most unpopular Prime Minister, actually, unfortunately, since Rishi, actually, because it was very close there. I think he's 67.
I think he's now more unpopular than Rishi, isn't he?
No, he's not. No, Rishi was minus 73, and Starmer was only minus 67. So he's still got a little bit. If he could just do one more thing more wrongly, he'd be the most unpopular Prime Minister in history. So actually, this is a good thing for Starmer, and if it turns out to be a good thing for the country, fantastic.
But at the same time, Starmer also needs friendship with the Europeans for all sorts of reasons. And the trouble is that if Starmer is not willing to stand up to Trump over certain issues, like Greenland, for instance, there are certain issues on which Starmer needs to express his displeasure. The danger is, it's like, a railway carriage invaded by a bunch of skinheads who are mugging and attacking the passengers, and there's Starmer in the corner reading a book and hoping that they don't come and attack him.
Starmer won't stand up to anybody. He's giving supposedly £18 billion to the Mauritians for nothing. I mean, it's weak as water.
Well, I don't... We move on to that issue?
No. We better move on, because in other news, it's been revealed that Angela Rayner is set to create an Islamophobia advisory committee, which could be headed by Sir Dominic Grieve, which will help draw up an official definition. The Labour Party's adopted definition has drawn criticism for being too broad and potentially threatening free speech. Well, back to my panel. Is this a blasphemy law by the back door?
Yeah,
actually...
It's an absolute shocker, and of course it's being done. For instance, if we're going to do it for Islam, why don't we do it for the Hindus? Why don't we do it for the Christians? Why don't we have anything that a religion feels is offensive to them? We'll have a law, effectively, which means it will be a nightmare, and it's only being done for one simple reason. They want to get the Muslim vote back on side for 2029. I feel this will cause, if they decide to go ahead with it, I can't understand why they want to do it, but if they do go ahead with it, it will cause an absolute nightmare at the come polling day. I think it's a shocking mistake, and I can only believe it's being done because they wanted to get the Muslims on side.
Well, I mean, there isn't actually much we disagree on here. I mean, my view of it is this. If you attack somebody for being a Muslim, then that should be subject to the law. If you attack Islam as a religion or any other religion, that is a free speech matter, and that should be allowed. And if you're going to sort of say, oh, well, some religions you can attack and others you can't, that would be appalling.
But as a Catholic, I think the Catholic Church is the repository of the truth with a capital T, and that no other religion can be that repository. Right. And it must be legal for me to believe that, and to say that, because I want people to come to the Catholic Church. It's a proselytising religion.
And it should be legal for me to say it's all a load of rubbish.
Disagree. That's right.
And all the other religions are a load of rubbish. And the problem in this country is you can say that about certain religions, and you have to be very careful about others.
But you must be free to burn papal encyclicals if you want. Yes, but on the other hand, you must be free to burn a Quran if you want.
Right, yes, but in fact, there's a guy who's actually going, I think he was arrested in Manchester. He's going to appear in court shortly. And I mean, this is a very serious moment. And the thing is that the Muslims act together, right? As we have seen in terrible places like Batley and beyond, that actually, strangely, they act in quite a, what I would have said was a threatening way. And there may be other religions that are as threatening and are as violent. In our country, I don't think I've seen them.
Where I do disagree with you, Jacob, is on this question about burning the Quran and the Bible. I think that is to forgive the pun, those are both inflammatory acts designed to offend and, well, to do worse than offend. I think that to make those illegal, and I'm not even sure what the position is right now, is reasonable. But for somebody simply to attack a religion because of what it stands for and what it's...
I'm afraid I'd be absolutely astonished if any police force in this country arrested somebody for burning a Bible.
Yeah, I totally agree with you.
Well, you may be right.
I don't really mind one way or the other.
Well, it depends where they do it, doesn't it? If you do it in... but go on, yeah.
If it's even and the same protection is provided for the holy works of all religions, that's one thing. But it seems at the moment, if the police act, if it's a Quran, and they would turn a blind eye if it were a Bible.
If you have a cartoon, do a cartoon, an offensive cartoon of Jesus, right? That's one thing. Oh, that's funny, isn't it? Oh, that is rude. Oh, I feel quite upset. Actually, forget about it. You do that of the Prophet Muhammad, right? Then you are literally endangering your own life, your family's life, and possibly your neighbour's life, and whatever.
It seems to me to show great lack of self-confidence. You see, the Catholic knows that there is a higher judge who will look into all this at a later stage. We don't need to worry too much about the response on Earth.
You Catholics go around doing whatever you want.
And then we can go to confession afterwards.
Yes. But a lot of people in our country feel that there is no humour to this discussion. A lot of people in our country feel very uneasy about where Islam is in our public life and what it looks like. If you looked at the Pew research into the numbers that are likely to be here, unfortunately, I know this to be sadness, I may not be here when this happens, but in 2050, the numbers are literally getting up to possibly 18 and 20% of the electorate. That could mean a very great danger for people who don't believe in Islam. I feel upset at the way that the Muslim. I'm not saying all Muslims, but there is a percentage of them who really feel that they want to control the UK. And honestly, every so often there is an outrage. When I look at who blew up that thing, it wasn't anybody. It wasn't a Hindu and it wasn't a Christian. Right, it was from one particular religion.
But it wasn't that long ago that in a certain part of the United Kingdom, Christians were doing some pretty appalling things as well.
All right. Well, thank you very much to my panel. In a moment, I will be speaking to one of our great historians, Nigel Biggar, now raised to the peerage, about the Church of England's plan to pay £100 million in reparations. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and this is GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
It's the body image thing that concerns me. It's young girls watching Love Island and really skinny girls. And young boys
hit the gym after this, yeah.
Exactly. I mean, they're seeing perfect bodies on the screen.
You don't need to go in the gym, Maymoon. You look gorgeous as you are, love.
I know. You see, the reason I don't enter anything like that, Carrie, is you know
you're going to win.
Exactly. And it's not fair. It's not fair, I think, on everybody else being there.
It's not fair.
No.
So, Kerry, what do you think about the body image thing? You know, when you talk about your daughter, is that something that you'd worry about, her comparing herself to the likes of what she sees on the screen?
Now, this is where there's a conflict of interest for me because I've been brought up in this industry since I was 17, so it's massively affected me. I mean, when you're put on the front cover of magazines after having a baby with a stretch mark in the circle of shame, you know, it does do a psychological effect on you. I think a lot of celebrities who've been around for so many years as I have been affected by that. But everyone has to bear in mind, I've had my children. I'm in my 40s. I feel I'm entitled to have my tweaks and try and improve on what I think are going down south and health and safety, tripping over any things that I don't want to be tripping over anymore. But I definitely do believe, I mean, majority of the young girls that go on Love Island, they all have the same big lips, the same big eyelashes, all the butt implants, and they're barely in their 20s. You know, it's if you go to the airport now, I remember going to the airport and I looked around and all the girls looked exactly the same.
GB News, the People's Channel.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Welcome back. In 2023, the Church Commissioners of the Church of England announced a funding commitment of £100 million over the period 2023 to 2031, following research that supposedly revealed its links to the transatlantic slave trade. The Policy Exchange has published a review of the Church's new policy, claiming it goes beyond the remit of the Church Commissioners' lawful powers and charitable purpose, as well as posing a dangerous precedent for the royal family. It also illuminates the fact that the vast sum of money could be better spent on struggling parishes across the country, and it reminds readers that no reparations have been paid to the Catholic Church for pinching all of our property in the 16th century. Well, I'm joined now by one of the report's authors, the historian Professor Nigel Biggar. Nigel, thank you for coming in. You actually made that point in your part of the document.
Yes, indeed.
The Church of England has got money from various sources, the Church Commissioners from Queen Anne's Bounty. And Queen Anne's Bounty is the fund in question, isn't it? And how much money it made, essentially, out of the South Sea bubble, and whether that then taints the money that is held by the Church Commissioners today.
That's right. So the Church Commissioners' report claimed that there is evidence that the Queen Anne's Bounty made profits out of slave trading, and therefore the vast pool of money the Commissioners now have is tainted. But subsequent research has revealed that there's no firm evidence that the Queen Anne's Bounty made money out of slave trading at all.
It probably lost money out of slave trading.
Yes, for a brief period, the Bounty had shares in the South Sea Company, but the South Sea Company made no money out of slave trading. They made a loss.
But to quote Scripture, doesn't a little leaven leaven all the bread, and that therefore if any of the funding of the Church Commissioners comes from investments, even if they were bad investments in slave trading, it taints the whole pool?
Well, Jacob, I mean, if we go far enough back in history, most of what we do is tainted. Yes, I think the fact that the Church, the Queen Anne's Bounty, retained shares, when they got the shares, the South Sea Company was not trading in slaves. Subsequently, the company resumed trading in slaves, and the Queen Anne's Bounty retained the shares, and they shouldn't have done that, that's for sure. But it's not true to say that there's evidence that the Church's resources now stand substantially on the basis of profits from slave trading. Not true.
And who should the money go to in terms of reparations? Have the Commissioners managed to find an identifiable group of people who were badly affected by slave trading?
Well, the assumption is that all black people, all descendants of slaves, are disadvantaged, and therefore they all deserve compensation. But as we know, it's 200 years since slavery and slave trading was abolished, and lots happened since then. Some black people in the Caribbean and some black people in this country are disadvantaged, others are not. And as for the causes of disadvantage, well, other causes have intervened. There are reputable economic historians and a former chairman of the Bank of Barbados, I think, who says that one reason that Jamaica, for example, is suffering economically has mostly to do with post-colonial governmental mismanagement, nothing to do with historic slavery.
Indeed, and that the Jamaican economy immediately post-war was doing quite well, and then declines at the point at which the colonial administration departs.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly.
And in terms of the legalities of it, does this meet a purpose of the Church of England that the Church Commissioners are allowed to fund? I know the report has questioned that and whether it's allowable under the Charities Commission's Code. How broad do you think that is? If the Church thinks its evangelising approach requires it to atone for sins of the past, is that a legitimate way of spending money?
Well, that's open to debate, Jacob. I mean, the Church Commissioners are bound to use their funds for the furtherance of the mission of the Church of England, especially with regard to parishes. To what extent paying reparations actually serves that purpose is an open question. But a major problem with the whole process is there has been no open debate about the assumptions made right at the beginning, none at all. And the Charity Commission's guidance to trustees requires them, of course, to open all proposals and policies to open discussion and debate. That hasn't happened.
And I think that's actually, in the report, such a strong part of your argument that throughout they have ifs and buts and so may have been involved and there's money from Colston and that may have been slave trading. And it's saying that if you can find any link, it must be slave trading or any possibility of a link. And that seems to me to be quite a stretch.
Well, it's highly speculative, but the forensic analysis of the accounts of the Queen Anne's bounty, the conclusions were highly conditional, as you just said. The body to whom the Church Commissioners delegated this issue went from that highly conditional, qualified report to make unqualified, unconditional assertions that the report itself does not support.
And is there anything that can be done to stop it? I mean, is there the prospect of a legal action, of a judicial review?
Well, we have put questions to the Church Commissioners about whether what they've done is really within the terms of their statutory duty. We have got, I think, evasive answers. We're waiting to hear from the Charity Commissions as to what they think. I mean, I hope that the Church Commissioners will be frank and honest, and if they have overreached their authority, they should admit it. I fear they won't.
But is this part of a broader picture? Because the Oxfam has come out and said that we took trillions of pounds from India in the way we ran India in what seems to me to be an economically illiterate report. But is that just the mood of the world, and that you and I, are we trying to push water uphill in opposing it?
Well, it's certainly been a habit of many institutions just to assume white guilt and to assume black victimhood. And so a lot of institutions have got on the bandwagon of apologies and reparations without much forethought. But my sense is the tide is turning because questions are being asked. And it's really important that institutions like the Church Commissioners give frank answers, and those have not been forthcoming so far.
And how can you force them to give answers? Well, what's the method of getting information out? Because in the House of Commons, there's the second Church Commissioner. Can he give answers on behalf of the Church Commissioners in Parliament? Can you raise questions now in the House of Lords about this?
That's something I will certainly look into. As you know, I'm a rather newborn.
Well, congratulations.
When I figure out how
a lot of people were very pleased to see you.
Thank you so much. But certainly the question of putting pressure via the House of Lords is one. Coming on your programme is another, because institutions under this kind of pressure tend to go quiet in the hope that attention will shift. But it's really important, therefore, that these issues be aired in public, so that institutions are embarrassed into giving honest answers if they won't give them anyway.
And 100 million would do an awful lot of church roofs.
Yes, and lots of parishes that have not got priests and are desperate for them.
All right. Well, thank you very much for joining me this evening. Next, it's Patrick Christie's. Patrick, what is on your programme tonight?
At Lowe's tonight, Jacob, Labour have looked at the Pakistani rape gang scandal, the Islamist terror threat, the pro-Palestine militancy on the streets of Britain, and they think the one thing this nation wants now is increased Islamophobia definitions. Yes, so we're going to get stuck into that. Starmer's dirty little Chagos deal, we'll be getting to grips with it. Why was he getting acting lessons from a woman on Christmas Eve in his office. That's a little bit bizarre, isn't it? Is Lucy Letby innocent? And I'll be taking you live to Sweden, where 10 people have sadly died after a mass shooting at a school. What is going on in that country?
Well, that's all going to be extremely interesting. People just about have time to make a cup of Ovaltine before they will be ready to listen to you. I'll be back next week. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg. This has been State of the Nation, and you're desperate to know the weather forecast for Somerset. Well, I hear amazingly it's going to be wonderful tomorrow. Clear, fresh, sunshine, lots of solar energy.
Even though we'll see a cloudy start, it'll be a bright outlook for the rest of the day. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Most of us have a couple of sunny days to look forward to, but it is going to be a bit colder than it was today. That's thanks to a cold front which has been pushing across the country. It's also bringing many of us a spell of rain. It started off pretty wet in the west, and through this evening that rain working its way across East Anglia and the southeast, but clearing away by midnight. Showers following on behind into western Scotland, some snow on the hills here, a few showers drifting through Northern Ireland overnight, but for many a dry night, lengthy clear spells, and a bit colder than last night. 2 or 3 degrees in most towns and cities, but there will be some pockets of frost in the countryside. So yeah, a chilly start to Wednesday, but nothing unusual for February, and generally a sunny start too, certainly across much of eastern Scotland. Plenty of sunshine on offer. Further west, there'll be sunny spells, but there will be showers moving in on a fairly brisk breeze, and some of those showers falling as snow over the hills. 1 or 2 showers will drift in across Northern Ireland through the day. May see the odd one still for northwest England, West Wales, southwest England too, but most of England and Wales starting fine and dry and with plenty of sunshine, and actually not a great deal of change as we go through the day. Some cloud will bubble up. There is the small chance for the odd shower across western parts. Certainly showers will keep going in western Scotland, but for the vast majority, dry and bright, lighter winds than today. It will be a cooler, fresher feel, but these temperatures in the afternoon pretty much spot on the average for the early part of February. Those temperatures will drop down pretty sharply on Wednesday night. More widespread frost on Thursday morning. Could be some fog around too on Thursday morning, particularly across these eastern areas, but generally it's another fine day. Not as many showers in the northwest. Most places dry and fine with sunny spells. Notice though a bit of an easterly wind picking up across the south. That will introduce more cloud on Friday and a colder feel for all of us heading into the weekend.
There will be a light breeze in the